Been transferred to Weymouth CID from Dorchester following the shake-up of the unit in the resort town. Maybe it was all part of his rehabilitation program. Several years earlier, he'd come close to being disciplined for laziness and incompetence, but now appeared to be a reformed character. Ray wasn't convinced. He had a way of looking at her that made her flesh crawl. Was she imagining it? She'd never mentioned it to anyone on high, because it might look vindictive. Anyway, she was a member of the county's specialist violent crime unit, and that carried kudos. Even though Stu was more senior, he would know the limits of his influence. In practice, she had more. Even so, she always ensured that she referred to him as Sir at the start of any encounter. Only once, mind. Then she'd do her best to remind him of her position in the elite unit, just to rub it in. She wouldn't be his junior for very much longer, though. She'd learned just a few days earlier that she'd passed her sergeant's exam with flying colours. She was due to celebrate her success later in the month, a meal out with her boss, Barry Marsh, and both their partners. Her biggest concern in recent months had been her place in the VCU following Barry's promotion to detective inspector rank. This had left a gap in the unit structure, and she worried that someone would suddenly appear, slotted neatly into the sergeant role, and her own position would be diminished or put at risk. But both Barry and Superintendent Sophie Allen, the latter still nominally the head of the VCU, had reassured her that her future was secure. Not that she'd seen very much of the big boss, as she referred to Sophie Allen, in recent weeks. She and Barry had dealt successfully with all the recent cases. Most of them had been straightforward assaults and related crimes, open and shut cases, really. That had to end sometime soon, though. Was this to be the case that brought Sophie back on board in a big way? The initial report certainly gave Ray that feeling. She dodged under the ribbon of crime scene tape and reached the cluster of uniformed officers at the front of the train. She nodded to Blackman. "Morning, sir. Any details for me?"
"Dead body in a pool of blood. Right at the back of the carriage. Looks like a stab wound to the chest. Forensics should be arriving any minute. The young bloke who stumbled on it is in the station manager's office, having a coffee. Name of Jason Lamb. The only other person to go in was PC Warrender here. He was first on the scene and checked for signs of life."
Ray turned to the youngest member of the uniformed group. "Hi, George. I take it there weren't any? Signs of life, I mean." Warrender shook his head.
"Looked like the victim had been dead for hours. Male, maybe mid-30s, lying on the floor, tucked in front of the last row of seats. You can't see the body through the window or from the aisle, but it looks just the position someone would be in if they curled up to avoid being seen. From the amount of blood, my guess is that he's been stabbed. There are stains trailing down from the carriage door and out here on the platform. It looks as though he was bleeding before he got on."
She was puzzled. How could that happen? I mean, if he's been there all night.
"This was the last train to arrive last night. All the passengers would have got off, but the doors might have been left open for a few minutes while the guard or whoever checked that all the carriages were empty. If they started with that carriage, which is logical because the guard's booth is there, the victim could have crawled on during the few minutes it took for the guard to check further on before closing the doors. Jason Lamb, the man who found him, was one of the first to arrive on the platform this morning. As soon as the train was unlocked and the doors opened, he went inside. It checks out with what two other witnesses who arrived at the same time have said."
"Are they still around?" Ray said.
George nodded. "Yeah, in a separate office."
Ray smiled at him. "Good work, George. That looks like the first forensic unit arriving now, and D.I. Marsh will be here any minute. The super isn't around today. I'm not sure where she is. Barry will know." George spoke quietly so that Blackman couldn't overhear.
"She's off to Oxford. Jade starts university today, so both her parents are going with her."
Ray looked at him with raised eyebrows. "Does that mean the rumour's true, then? You're, seeing Jade?" George looked as though he wished the ground would open and swallow him.
"Oh, God. Has it leaked out, then? We've been so careful."
Ray laughed. "Small place, Dorset. No secrets are safe here. Barry spotted the two of you a few weeks ago. But don't worry, it hasn't gone any further. And the boss hasn't said anything herself.